Dear ladies and gentlemen, good morning everyone, and welcome to quarterly webinar for Klaipedos nafta. Today Nasdaq Vilnius is hosted by CEO of the company, Mr. Darius Šilenskis, and CFO of the company, Mr. Jonas Lenkšas. Firstly, the heads of the company will comment Klaipedos nafta financial results for the 12 months of 2019. And right after the presentation, we will open the floor for questions. I invite you to use the question box on the right side of the screen. All questions will be addressed after the presentation. So, Mr. Šilenskis, I invite you to start the presentation.
Good morning, everybody. So as usually, before presenting the financial results, we would like to briefly go through the main activities and to make short briefing about our main activities. So on slide number 4, which you can see in front of you right now, we have a mission, vision, and value as presented to our investors. There is no changes on that. We still have our mission, which is assurance of reliable and effective supply of LNG and transshipment of oil products. And the company's values, which was identified 2 years ago, we are remaining the same. So I will move to another slide, to the next slide, slide number 5, where you can see our main activities. And in general, we can split them into 2 bigger groups. We are operator of both oil and LNG terminals. In terms of oil terminals, the biggest assets are located in Lithuania. We are operating marine terminal in Klaipedos seaport with overall capacity of about 600,000 cubes. And we also operate inland terminal, which main purpose is storage of state reserve and services to the commercial customers. LNG terminals, we have 2 terminals in Klaipedos, FSRU unit Independence, which is used to import LNG and regasify it and provide it to the local grid. And also we operate a small-scale LNG terminal, which is capable to accept LNG smaller cargoes, load them into trucks, bunker ships, and provide bunkering both to ships and by using trucks. So main highlights, I won't go through each highlight and I won't citate it, but I will focus on 4 main messages which has happened during the last quarter. So starting from the oil business or oil segment, the main message was that we successfully prolonged our contract with BNK UK, which is Belarusian entity and which is main exporter of Belarusian oil products from Belarusian refineries. The contract has been renewed or prolonged for additional 2 years period. Talking about our LNG activities, so major event from this activity is related with corporate approvals, counter signature regarding the financing both of LNG supplement reduction and acquisition of FSRU solution. In regards to our global LNG activities, we are continuing our negotiation with GNA company for operations and management services in GNA's LNG terminal located in Porto de Açu in Brazil. In regards to our small-scale terminal, the key event which has happened during Q4 of 2019 was a signature of long-term contract signature with Polish state-owned oil and gas company PGNiG, where we have dedicated 100% of capacities of a small-scale terminal to this company, and commercial operations will commence starting from April 2020. In terms of the financing, I already mentioned the corporate approvals for acquisition of FSRU also has been gained during that period. So from now, I will pass stage to Jonas, and he will go through briefly financial results. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Darius, very much, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you here, and I will start with main financial highlights of our results. And the year 2018 was marked by a change in IFRS 16 that has a significant impact to our balance sheet and statement of comprehensive incomes. And as it was previously commented, but it's worth to repeat once more that the impact comes from the situation that the company has FSRU lease denominated in foreign currency, namely US dollars. And at the same time, the lease amount and term are relatively large and long. Therefore, fluctuations of Euro-USD rate have material effect for statement of comprehensive income through the negative or positive result of a change in foreign currency exchange rate. And this impact is large because it is calculated from the lease amount not only for 1 year, but also for all lease term in our case. And in statement of comprehensive income, we have to record foreign currency impact coming from lease amounts also for 2021 and 2024 period. So on the other hand, the company doesn't realize any loss of income from such currency exchange rate deviation, as according to methodology, the regulator for the company compensates actual costs, what means also the lease expenses at actual exchange rate. Therefore, company has an impact only from the amount of 1 year's lease, not from all period. And in the next year, difference between planned and actual exchange rate is compensated. So due to this reason, and for possibility to compare results with the previous periods, an adjusted result and indicators are calculated and presented. In adjusted result is the result where influence of IFRS 16 is eliminated. So going to main financial highlights, so we have turnover or sales revenues, which is by 4 million euros higher than in previous year. Adjusted net profit is also higher than in previous year by 1.6 million euros, or almost 6%. In terms of EBITDA is slightly lower than in previous year. Speaking about the quarters, the last quarter of this year was better than in previous quarter, and also what we can see that the last quarter results in terms of sales revenue and also in terms of adjusted net profit is the best quarter since quarter 2 2018. In this slide is provided a breakdown of impact of IFRS 16, and going from left side to the right. So first column is showing our adjusted net profit result, which is 13.2 million euros. And the next column represents an impact of a change in foreign currency exchange rate, which for 2019 amounted as a negative impact of 6.1 million euros. The third column is showing an impact coming from IFRS 16 methodology together with influence result of deferred tax number. And in total, our impact of IFRS 16 for 2019 comprise a negative impact of 5.1 million euros. Now going into the structure of sales revenues and EBITDA based on segments. So the structure of revenues and EBITDA by business lines are in principle the same as usual. And much more revenues are generated by LNG terminals, but in terms of EBITDA, close to 2 times more is generated by oil terminals. In terms of revenues, sales revenues from LNG terminals has increased, but due to unfavorable situations in the market, revenues of oil terminals have decreased. And efforts in business development direction has shown positive results, and in 2019, business development activity has earned significantly higher sales revenues than in 2018. Looking at the EBITDA part, we can see that main impact of IFRS 16 comes to LNG terminals segment. So the last picture on the left right bottom corner, where we can see that EBITDA of 48 million euros against to adjusted EBITDA of 9.5 million euros. Now, coming to the results of each business lines, I am passing the word back to Darius.
So thank you, Jonas. I will go briefly through the results of each segment. So starting from our oil business segment, in the slide you can see that transshipment quantities in oil terminals has decreased by 14%, and activity from oil business generated 7% less EBITDA compared with the same period in 2018, mainly due to the following reasons. Decrease in transshipment quantities was caused by numbers of incidents at the closest factories, refineries, I mean, and companies' main clients, which resulted lower production volumes and lower export volumes to the seaborne markets. As well, Orlen Lietuva, which is one of the main customers, continuing to divert oil products via railroad to neighboring markets. Also, the effect, or let's say, the less tons has been transshipped due to Druzhba pipeline accident, which happened in quarter two of 2019, and this also influenced significant decrease of oil products handling because Belarusian refineries and we was just minimizing refining capacities. And also additional revenues has been generated from other activities such as storage of oil products, crude oil, loading and discharge of trucks, and you can see that despite of the fact that 14% less tons still, let's say, allowed us to generate only 7% less EBITDA comparing with 2018. I will move to the next slide. So LNG terminals. So shortly saying, we had a record year 2019. The increase on regasification was amounted 119%, almost 120%. And in 2019, we have regasified and provided to the grid 19.6 terawatt hours of natural gas. In terms of revenues, we have generated 71.1 million euros from LNG terminals activity, which is about 7 million euros more comparing to 2018. Talking about the business factors, the main reasons was that the pricing on the global LNG markets was favorable, and also during year 2019 we have managed to attract 3 new commercial use of FSRU, which has resulted in increase of regasification and reloading volumes. Some statistics. So during 2019, we have managed to perform over 60 ship-to-ship operations. And actually this number is more than during the entire period of terminal activity from 2014 to 2018. From this number, 51 LNG carriers. For example, in 2018, there was only 10 LNG carriers. So 2019 also was a record in terms of import of LNG. I already mentioned it amounted 19.6 terawatt hours. It makes about 2 billions of cubic meters of natural gas, while in year 2018 we had 8.8 terawatt hours. And one more important message to pass is that about 6 terawatt hours, which is about 600 million cubic meters of natural gas, were transported towards Latvian border. So we was, let's say, this volume is a transit volume. And also it's worth to mention that about 94.5 thousand megawatt hours of LNG was reloaded to small-scale LNG carriers. And this is also more comparing to 2018 when we had 64,000 megawatt hours. I also would like to underline that those operations are unique. We was first who started transshipment back to the smaller FSRU carriers and feeders. Also, it's worth to mention about the LNG small-scale terminal. So we had 11 LNG carriers discharged at the jetty, and comparing to 2018, we had only 5 of them. So I will passing back stage to Jonas.
Yes, thank you, Darius. So I will proceed with the next financial information, and in this slide we present main financial figures and indicators. And due to earlier explained reason of IFRS 16 influence, we are providing here also a column with numbers and indicators in adjusted values. And as suggested, net profit was higher than in 2018, so all ratios except of EBITDA are better than in previous year. Speaking about the balance sheet, we see a major change between 2019 and 2018, and the main reason is IFRS 16 influence. We can see that the total balance amount increased by 236 million euros, and by the same amount we see right of use assets. And cash and cash equivalents have decreased as part of the cash is transferred now to the bank deposits, and the current assets group has increased respectively. On the liability side, the reason of increase of total balance is the same IFRS 16 issue, and main difference from 2018 is appearance of lease liability that comprised 242 million euros, and lease liability is higher than right of use assets value, and it is an outcome of influence of a change in foreign currency exchange rate. liabilities are reassessed according to a exchange rate in foreign currency at the reporting date, while assets remain at initial value. Financial liabilities has decreased as current loans are being repaid, and equity is lower than in previous year, as in 2019 all profit of 2018 has been paid in dividends, and also a portion of own shares has been purchased with the aim to pay out to employees as part of the bonuses. So to summarize, the structure of the balance sheet in general has not changed a lot if speaking from the previous quarter. And now going to investment overview, I will also give the word to Darius.
Thank you, Jonas. So talking about the investment program of a company, during 2019, we have invested 22 million euros. Majority of the investments were into second phase of Klaipedos oil terminal investment program. We also had some investments on LNG terminal and minor investments, mainly into safety improvement in our Subačius oil terminal, where we store state compulsory reserve. So I believe that's all from our side, and we are ready to go through the questions.
Dear guests, thank you for your presentation. Now I will proceed with the questions in the order they were received. And some questions were received in advance. The first one is the following. Klaipedos nafta has stated that it is able to handle up to 3 million tons of crude oil per year. Could you elaborate to which extent would it then affect oil products handling capacity? Which storage tanks are being used for crude oil, and how less oil products can be handled while having 3 million tons of crude oil in Klaipėda?
Thank you for the question. So I will make a general remark on maybe explanation on the capacities and on technological specifics of our Klaipedos oil terminal, which is actually quite unique, and it's fully capable to transship from any means of transport to any means of transport all refined products. I'm not talking about all petrochemical, let's say, list, but all liquid refined products, petroleum products, dark products, light products, heated, non-heated. And the infrastructure of a Klaipedos oil terminal allows us to switch part of our capacities from one grade or even type of products to another. If we are talking about the capacities of Klaipedos oil terminal, so before the completion of the investment program, let's say our capacities was 7 million metric tons of petroleum products transshipped through this infrastructure. But this limitation was mainly comes from the restrictions of maximum capacities of railway trestles, discharge railway trestles. If we are talking about the imports, the different, let's say, capacities and capabilities of a terminal exist. So those 3 million tons can be easily handled without effect of the, let's say, outbound flow or exported volumes. Moreover, it's worth to mention that during 2019, we have added, in addition, 120,000 cubic meters of the terminal capacities, and which actually empowers us and allows us to provide service for alternative feedstock imports for our customers without affecting the regular export flows of refined products. So I believe I have answered to the question. Thank you.
Second question received in advance was the following. What is the current pace of work regarding oil terminal expansion? When the modernization program may be finished? And do you consider further rise of expenses? The budget for second stage of oil terminal expansion has been already extended in the end of November. What was the reason for that?
Very good question. Thank you. So I maybe will start from the our, let's say, schedule of the second phase investment program, and it is planned to be completed Q4 of 2021. At that time, we should have additional railway trestle, which will be connecting new built storage tanks and new capacities. Talking about the November, and there was a key event published at Nasdaq. It actually was not related with increase of a budget or extension of the implementation period of the second phase. It was just a technical, how to say, merge of the two different sub-phases into one. But due to the scope, we needed corporate approval, so that's why we went to the board and published that to the market. But this is not related with the increase of a budget or extension in timing. So there was also part of a question. Are we considering further rise of expenses? So looking from today's perspective, no, we are within the budget and we are on time according to the schedule and milestones set at the beginning of the second phase. Thank you.
Some more questions received in advance. Does Klaipedos Nafta have any plans to develop its business activity in other Baltic Sea LNG terminals?
Thank you for the question. As I shortly mentioned, one of our activities, in addition to operation of LNG and oil terminals, we are also engaged into development of international global LNG projects without, let's say, restricting ourselves on any region. As it was published before, we have experience in consulting services in South Americas. We also did some projects, participated some projects in Mediterranean, and one of the key events published during Q4 was related with Brazilian LNG project. So Baltic Sea LNG terminals are not exclusion, and they are also, let's say, potentiality for our global LNG project development team. Thank you.
Also, where can we find statistics related to power utilization rate of LNG truck reloading station?
Thank you for the question. There is no such statistics, and it's related also with the confidentiality obligations, which is coming from the agreements with our customers. But in general, during the presentation of unaudited 2019 results, we showed that in terms of deliveries into small-scale LNG terminal, we had deliveries, which is by 6 deliveries more, 6 cargoes more comparing to 2018. But it's worth to underline what has been also mentioned before, that from April we are starting commercial operations together with one of the biggest players in the region, with PGNG, and we expect that this will boost, let's say, our small-scale LNG or LNG truck reloading capacities. Thank you.
The last one received in advance. In open sources, it's possible to find information about daughter company SGD Terminalas, where Mindaugas Jusis is positioned as head of company. Does it mean that Klaipedos Nafta is going to separate oil and LNG terminals? If yes, what will happen with FSRU and fixed asset related to oil and LNG? What will happen with leasing agreement of FSRU?
Thank you for the question. I believe this, let's say, question includes some outdated information because Mr. Mindaugas Jusis is not working in our any company, group of companies of Klaipedos Nafta. So from end of July, and answering into a question, are we going to separate assets related to oil and LNG? No, we don't have such plan. We don't have any more such plans. Thank you.
Okay. What has been the capacity utilization percentage of Klaipėda LNG terminal over full year 2019?
Thank you for the question. The utilization rate of such infrastructure is, let's say, a tricky question to answer because it relates to many factors. But if to talk about the theoretical capacities of FSRU Independence, so we are 4 billion cubic meters per year. And this is the perfect case scenario where the regasification, let's say, transit and all the other circumstances goes well. But if to, let's say, refer to theoretical capacity, so last year we have utilized FSRU Independence by 50%. Thank you.
Okay. Does the company hedge foreign exchange rate risk?
Yes, thank you for the question. It's Jonas. I will answer it. So at the moment, the company is not hedging foreign currency rate risk, but we're already working on that for this year, and we believe that we should have it in the future.
One more. What is the regulated WACC of LNG operations for this year set by the regulator?
Yes, so WACC for this year is 2.9%. So short answer.
Yes, next please. As regulated LNG operations generated more revenues in 2019 than max limit set by the regulator at 66.6 million. Does it mean that LNG tariff fixed component will be further reduced this year and Klaipedos Nafta will earn even less than the new limit of 36.6 million for this year?
Yes, thank you for the question. And it's true that in 2019 the company has received more revenues than it was set by the regulator. And yes, it's correct that in future periods this received bigger amount of revenues have to be returned back to the market. So what regards this year, it will not change, but for the year 2021, this high revenue of 2019 will be reduced the year of 2021, the revenues of the company. but this will not change the revenues of current year.
Thank you very much for your answers and questions. We will continue. Just a moment. Do you expect any export from Belarus in coming months, or their refineries are working at low capacity to cover only domestic needs?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we do, because we have agreements with our Belarusian counterparties where the take-or-pay volumes are defined. Due to confidentiality, I cannot name it, but despite of the fact that refineries are operating in some reduced capacities of crude, they are continuing export of refined products, including Klaipedos direction. Thank you.
One more, please. Approximately how much does Klaipedos Nafta plan to invest in the global LNG project activities during the coming 3 years?
Thank you for the question. So, as I have already mentioned, we have a dedicated team which main task is to look for potential projects worldwide, which fits into our, let's say, risk portfolio and which meets our return ratios, let's say, defined let's say limits or ranges. To say precisely, we don't have such a precise aim or goal for oncoming 3 years, but in case if we will get profitable enough and suitable project, we will definitely think about investment into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Currently, we are waiting for more questions. Arrived. Please remind us what was the regulated WACC of LNG operations for 2019 and why such low WACC of only 2.9% for 2020?
Yes, thank you for the question. So the WACC was changed according to the methodology after a 5 years period for the next 5 years period, and the main change was due to changes in the methodology formula, and that's the reason. And also there was a question to remind what was the regulated WACC for 2019. So that WACC was 6.8%, and yes, it became very low for 2020, 2.9.
There is one more question. I would like to ask again about SGD terminals. In 2019, Lithuanian Finance Ministry agreed to developing SGD terminals from KN, which was tried to block by Achema Group. It means that Ministry and KN decided to cancel developing SGD terminals.
Question. So I will split this question into two probably blocks. And we'd start with let's say a HEMA and potential block of a decision. So just to summarize, during Q4 of 2019, we have got all needed corporate approvals and decisions, and also we have ensured financing both of a LNG supplement reduction and acquisition of a FSRU. Simply saying, the decision is to continue operation, to acquire FSRU unit and to continue operations of FSRU, natural gas or LNG import to Lithuania by using our infrastructure. And coming back to the SGD terminalas, so I believe this one of our group companies is a bit confusing market participants. This company is one of let's say special purpose business vehicles which has been created at the beginning, and the purpose of that, yes, there was maybe intentions to diversify and split activities, oil separately from the LNG, but due to after the evaluation of the situation, after the analysis of pros and cons, we don't have any more plans to separate those activities. Those SGD terminalas, joint stock company, one of our companies, daughter companies, it will be not used anymore for this business separation because it's not applicable anymore. Thank you.
Next question. What cost 0.5 million euro other income in Q4?
Yes, thank you for the question. So this is caused by the situation that we had a decrease in amounts payable to our supplier according to an additional agreement between the companies.
So it seems all questions are answered. I think we can conclude, and the record of the presentation will be available as always in the Nasdaq Baltic YouTube channel webinar playlist and on the company's website kn.lt. Dear guests, thank you very much for your presentations and for answers given. Participants, thank you for joining.